Hare Krishna, good morning to devotees from Sri Jagannath Puri Dham. These are our adventures in Srimad Bhagavatam. Sorry, we're starting a few minutes late this morning. A really interesting topic coming today. Let me just go ahead and say a few prayers to begin. Gauranga gana go to Goloruharam Gauranga Gudatama Gopyada Kopa Briksham Gopala Gadaratidam Yati Singha Gora Govinda Deshikavadam Satatam Namami Uttama Adama Kichuna Bachila Jachiya Jile Kakola Kahe Premananda Emona Gauranga Hridaya Dariya Bola Bhaja Gauranga Kaha Gauranga Laha Gaurangera Namare Jai Jana Gauranga Bhaje Se Hoyamada Pranare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Yashaiva Padambuja Bhakti Labhya Prema Bidana Parama Pumata Tasmai Jagan Mangala Mangalaya Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Madgavirapi Gopala Sri Kriyat Kripaya Jadi Tadaiva Sambhaya Pitvaha Rishayustat Kriya Janaha Shri Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Sasanatana Rupaka Gopala Raghunathapta Brajabala Vipahimam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Good morning, dear devotees from Sri Jagannath Puri Dham. It's our daily adventures in Srimad Bhagavatam. And today we're continuing with our series of talks we're calling Meeting in Kuruksetra. This is number 90. And I think we're more than halfway through. Today we want to speak something about the reply that the Gopis made to Uddhava. And we're still reading from the 47th chapter of the 10th canto. And we'll be reading a few verses today. We'd like to remember the pranam mantra that Jiva Goswami gives in the first verse of the 46th chapter of the 10th canto, where he offers pranam as follows. Artaika sadhanam krishnam artam brajajanam shitan tam chatarsvasakam bhaktam artya vande durasaya. Artaika sadhanam krishnam. I'm taking shelter of Krishna with a very sorrowful heart, with a hopeless heart. This is how we take shelter of Krishna. And that same Krishna who's Artan Brajajanam Chitan, he's the only shelter for people who are suffering. He's the only shelter for the suffering Brijbasis. And tam tatasvastakam bhaktam artyam vande darase. I offer my vandana to Uddhava, who alleviated the suffering of the people of Braj. So the way this works is we want something interactive. So anybody who's watching, my humble request is that you please make some comments, give some feedback, give some reflections or something, so that we can not just be one-sided. So in our verse today, we're starting with text number 41. Katam rati vishesha gya priyascha purayoshitam nanu bhadyeta tadvakyar vibhramaschanu bhajitaha. This is the Gopis speaking. Uddhava, he's presented Krishna's message to them, and we heard from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Jiva Goswami and Sanatana Goswami and other acharyas how the Gopis were responding to what Krishna said and their reflections on it, and how Krishna told the Gopis, he told them the same thing again and again. He repeated what he said, and this was in accordance with Krishna's instruction to him in the 3rd verse of the 46th chapter, where Krishna told them, Mat sandeshayar vimochaya. Sandeshai means a message, but it's plural, it means messages. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that this is a very important point that Krishna is making here, that he's telling Uddhava that you tell them, and then you tell them again, and you tell them again. You repeat the same thing over and over again. Sometimes when new people come, I remember doing a kirtan for some of my family members, my non-devotee family members in Reno, Nevada some years ago. And one of them commented afterwards, he was a little confused, because he was thinking it's like music. He said, you just sang the same thing over and over again. And similarly, even sometimes new devotees, they think, well, gosh, how many times am I going to hear about, Krishna being tied up with a rope to the grinding mortar by Mother Yashoda, and how many times am I going to hear about Krishna killing Putana? And well, we hear it over and over and over again. And the amazing thing is that it's ever fresh, and that the more that we hear it, the more that we enter into it, the more that we understand it. And especially, as Srila Prabhupada said in some places, we want to hear from the lips of someone. When we hear in personal association with someone, then, and we serve the message, as Srila Ramanujacharya describes, we want to have Shravan Adhikar, qualification to hear. And that Shravan Adhikar is of 3 types, Pranipat, Pariprashna, and Seva. We should surrender to the message, we should inquire confidentially, and we should render service to the message and the messenger. And by doing that, then it comes alive to our heart. So in the 41st verse, the Gopis now, they're replying back to Uddhava. Katam rati vishesha gya priyascha purayoshitam nanu bhadyeta tadvakyar vibhramaschanu bhajitaha. They said that Sri Krishna is expert in all kinds of conjugal affairs and is the darling of the city women. How can he not become entangled now that he's constantly adored by their enchanting words and gestures? In his Bhavarta Deepika commentary on this verse, Srila Sridhar Swami, the author of the famous commentary on the Bhagavatam, describes that the verses which are following now are each spoken by different gopis, which is very beautiful. This is a way of a sangha. Each person gets some opportunity to speak, and they all contribute their realization, their feelings. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that Uddhava is telling them that foolish women, why are you asking the same question again? Because in the previous verse they ask a similar question, that Krishna now he must be captured by the ladies of Mathura. And so the ladies, the gopis are speaking, and another one's saying the same thing with sarcastic anger. And the gopis are saying that Krishna, he knows everything about loving affairs. He's Rasaraj. And so now he's become the darling of the ladies of Mathura. So if they're loving him so much, how will he not become attached to them? Anubhajitaha, being constantly worshipped by their words and services. Krishna is going to respond to them. And he's going to be forced to render service to them also, because that's Krishna's nature. Yegatam mam prapadyante tam sataiva bhajamyaham. And just as the devotee serves and worships Krishna, Krishna also comes to serve the devotee. In the Vishnu Sahasranam, there's a nice verse which describes Sevam Sarata Dutyadyam Sadhu Sada Yatityasa. That Bhagavan, this is in some of the names of the Lord, and since he accepts very happily and accomplishes the tasks, the services that are given to him by his dear devotees, such as being a messenger, sometimes Yudhishthira Maharaj claps his hands and says, "Hey Krishna, we want you to go to Hastinapur and give a message for us in cello." And not exactly like that probably, but Krishna very humbly accepts the order of Yudhishthira. Krishna very humbly becomes a chariot driver for Arjuna. Did you ever wonder how it is during the battle with the elephants screaming and people shouting and so much noise going on and drums and things, that Arjuna is able to convey messages to Krishna as a driver to go right or left or stop or go faster? Well, there's a system of warfare. The warrior sits in the back in a higher position than the rati, or the driver, and he puts his one foot on each shoulder of the driver. And by pressing on the shoulder of the driver, then he conveys a message. So this is how he communicated with Krishna. It's a very humble service. So because of this, the Vishnu Sahasranam describes that he's called sadhu, or one who acts according to his devotees' wishes. So this is the nature of the Lord. He's Bhakta Bhaktiman, and he serves the devotees in so many different ways. When the devotees are serving him, then Krishna wants to reciprocate. So the gopis are saying that we're just village ladies, and we don't have any special conjugal attraction, rati vishesh, to offer him. The gopis are feeling we don't really have any love. And these feelings, again, this is such an important chapter of the Bhagavatam. This is why we're going very slow to this chapter, and we're really considering it very carefully, because this is an essential point of the meeting in Kuruksetra. Of course, this chapter stands alone as a Brahma Gita, Radharani's words to the bumblebee, but we see it expanded later in the meeting of Kuruksetra, and we see it again later in Jagannath Puri, in Gaura Lila, especially in the 16th chapter of the Anjalila, where Mahaprabhu is experiencing the same feelings Kaviraj Goswami describes as Radharani was experiencing when she met with Uddhava. So one of the qualities that we hear from Kaviraj Goswami is that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was thinking, I have no love, premahina. He says, prema gandhanai, I don't even have a fragrance of love, not even a little smell of it. I have nothing. And the gopis are thinking, we have no rati vishesh to offer Krishna. This is, the gopis are speaking this verse, saying that katam rati vishesha gya, that the ladies of Mathura, they have this rati vishesh. So indirectly, as we often comment, the Bhagavatam, prati shloki, prati akshar, nanatha, every verse, every syllable, every word, every syllable has unlimited meaning. And anvaya vetirekam, directly and indirectly. The direct meaning is given here. Katam rati vishesha gya, that the ladies in Mathura, they're very expert in this rati vishesh, this all types of conjugal affairs. But the indirect meaning is that we're not. we don't really understand that thing. We're not expert in using sweet words and doing mudras and proper gestures and things. So we've concluded that Krishna, therefore, he's left us. This is why. And he's gone to the ladies of Mathura because they're more cultured. And some of the other gopis, Jiva Goswami and Laghu Vaishnava Toshini, says, does someone need to ask? There's no doubt that Krishna, he's pleasing all the ladies of Mathura with his dress, with his ornaments, with his beautiful body. He's worshipped by their words, by their gestures and things. And altogether those ladies, they have some cleverness which increases their affection for each other. So how can he not become attracted to them? This will definitely happen. And then the gopis, they go into the next verse and they tell Uddhava, Api smarati na sadho Govinda prastute kvachit Goshti madhye parastrinam gramya svaira katantare. They address Uddhava as sadho. That maybe now we're being a little harsh with him, so they think we should be polite. So they say, "Oh sadhu, oh saintly person." And now the gopis are beginning to open up their hearts and they begin to cry. Api smarati na sadhu Govinda prastute kvachit. Does Govinda, when he's talking, prastute kvachit, when he's having these discussions there with these city ladies, does sometimes maybe he remember us? Goshti Madhye Purastrinam, there in association at Goshti Madhye Purastrinam, in that city with all those ladies. Gramya Swaya Katantare. Maybe sometimes he mentions us. He speaks something about us. This is the nature of love. When love is there and in separation, we want to know that does our beloved speak about us sometimes. You've gone to school and left your parents at home, but do my parents, do they talk about me sometimes? Or the parents are wondering, does my son or daughter, now that they've gone to school in some other country, do they sometimes speak about us? This is the nature of love. And the gopis go on in the next verse telling Uddhava, Takim nishasmarati yasu tada priyabir Brindavane kumuda kunda sasankaramye Remek vanachcharana nupura rasa goschyam Asmabhya idita manogya kataka datchit. They say, O Uddhava, does Krishna remember the nights in the Brindavan forest, which were very beautiful with the lotus, and the jasmine flowers, and the bright moon? As we glorified his charming pastimes, he enjoyed with us his beloved girlfriends in the circle of the rasa dance, which resounded with the music of ankle bells. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur offers a very deep realization about this verse. The gopis, they knew that there's no place that can be as beautiful as Brindavan. This is the indirect meaning of this verse. The verses have such very, very deep meaning. That the gopis, they're glorifying the Brindavan forest, and they're indicating that nowhere in the universe can someone find such a charming, beautiful scene as a Brindavan forest with the fragrance of beautiful flowers and the moon's rays and the Jamuna. And no one loved Krishna as much as the gopis. Therefore, no one could understand him as well. So the gopis are indicating here some anxiety because they're thinking that Krishna now, he's not in Brindavan and he's not getting our service, but their anxiety is not for themselves. It's such a very deep point. Everybody hears about the feelings of separation from the gopis' experience. But because Atmavan Manyate Jagat, Our tendency is we extrapolate, we project our attitude onto others. And now we should be very careful not to do that with the gopis, but sometimes we do that and we think, yes, the gopis, they get so much happiness being with Krishna for themselves, and they're so intoxicated with that this is the source of their sorrow. If that were true, then why don't they just walk to Mathura? As we sometimes comment, Radhanath Maharaj, for many years, when he first would go to Braj, he would arrive by train in Mathura, and then he would walk. It would take him a few hours. He would walk from Mathura to Brindavan. It's not that great a distance. Now, think about it. If the gopis really are feeling so much separation from Krishna, not that big a distance, why don't they just walk? Or if they're too tired to walk or too weak, they can get in a cart or something and go. Why don't they go? There's a reason. And it's being brought out here in these verses where the gopis are describing the glories and wonder of Brindavan. And indirectly, what they're saying is that the gopis are crying. And they're speaking about the wonders of Brindavan, the wonders of the Ras Leela. And indirectly, they're saying, there's no such place in Mathura. The banks of the Jamuna here in Brindavan, the sandy banks, and they're so wonderful. There's no such riverbank in Mathura. Where in Mathura is Krishna going to get such music and song and dance? The talks that we had with Krishna, we saw sometimes. There would be some airplanes up above us in the sky, and the apsaras were coming, and they were watching to get some clue about loving dealings. These women of Mathura, do they know any discussions, how to have sweet discussions with Krishna? They just speak in a one dimensional way. It's very flat. But when the gopis speak, it's multifaceted. There's layers upon layers and such sweetness. And Krishna becomes defeated by the words of the gopis. So who in Mathura, they say, who in Mathura, they give a little, Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur is describing the words. He says, who in Mathura knows how to make sandalwood paste? Who in Mathura knows how to make flower garlands and things? They're indirectly recognizing, acknowledging that some of the residents of Mathura are going to be doing it, such as Kubja, and such as Sridham and others, but they don't know how to do it right. So by staying in Mathura, this is the anxiety of the gopis. The anxiety of the gopis, the intensity of the gopis is not for themselves. And this is the point which is indirectly being brought out in this verse. And this is the amazing quality of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Nowhere, anywhere as we heard in such depth about the heart of the Lord and the heart of the Lord's devotees. And this again is such a foundational discussion in the Brahma Gita. It's so foundational because this is the foundation of Gaura Leela. By the feelings of the gopis, seeing the intensity of their feelings, Krishna himself, he wants to taste that. He says, they're getting more pleasure than me. So he has to come again as a devotee and experience the mood of the gopis. So the gopis, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says in Sarita Darshini, that the gopis are thinking that by staying there in Mathura, Krishna has no happiness. And we're going to die, not because, oh, I want my sense gratification and my lover's gone. Like a young girl thinks, oh, my boyfriend's gone. He's gone to war and to fight in the war. Now, how can I live? Because in the material world, our love is selfish. It's hoitaki. It's with a motivation, and therefore it's pratiyata. It has an end. But divine love is ahoitiki, apratiyata, and therefore yayatma suprasiddhi. It fully satisfies the self. And that word atma in this verse from the first canto of the Bhagavatam also refers to paramatma. It's fully satisfying. Such love is fully satisfying to both the devotee, but it's especially satisfying to the Lord. And this is why the gopis, they're thinking, we're going to die. They're going to die not because they're missing their sense gratification, but they're thinking they're going to die because Krishna's not getting happiness. This is terrible. And they thought to themselves, there were some ladies in Mathura who somehow, maybe they were trained in Brindavan. They were trained by some of the gopis. Then, even if there was just one such lady, then Krishna could enjoy dancing with her. He could play his vansi, his flute. He could do other pastimes. And if we knew that such a lady existed in Mathura, then we could be peaceful. We could be happy here in Brindavan, even though we're separate from Krishna. This is the intensity of the love of the gopis. My Guru Maharaj said in one lecture in Bhubaneswar in 1993, everyone desires their own happiness. He who has a less desire for his own happiness is Mahat Vyakti. He's a great personality. That's very, very rare. Who is there who has less desire for his own happiness? He's thinking of the happiness of other persons. And we glorify such persons. We say that Gandhi is Mahatma. Or we say Martin Luther King was a great person because he marched for black rights. We consider that someone who has less desire for his own happiness, as Gandhi would fast. And he promoted that living very, very simply as a kind of protest against British rule. And therefore he gave up his own happiness. We consider that person Mahat Vyakti. He's a great personality, Guru Maharaj said. And that person is completely indifferent to his own happiness. Is Sumahat, a very great personality. But those who are giving pleasure and happiness to Krishna at the cost of their own happiness, they're paramahan, supremely great. They are worshipable. They are the gopis. This is a statement from my revered spiritual master. The gopis are paramahan. Where have we ever heard of such a thing? Everyone is approaching the Lord. Dhanam dehi, rupam dehi. You please give me this, give me some wealth, give me a beautiful wife, give me a nice job, give me a nice husband. Even as devotees, we're approaching in this way. We don't understand the greatness of the love of the gopis of Brindavan. And this is the message that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to come to give. Why he came to teach us about the love of the gopis. And the love of the gopis is so astonishing that when they're in a miserable condition, what we would consider to be a suffering condition, that's their greatest happiness. We mentioned Prabhupada's purport, I think, in our last session from the fourth canto. I'd like to look over it again. It's very beautiful. He says that sometimes, let's see here, maybe I can put this on the screen also. Just one moment, I'm sorry for being difficult here. There we go. Prabhupada says, sometimes saintly or very religious person has to meet with reversals in life. Such incidents should be taken as providential. Although there may be sufficient cause for being unhappy, one should avoid counteracting such reversals, for the more we become implicated in rectifying such reversals, the more we enter into the darkest regions of material anxiety. Lord Krishna has also advised us in this connection. We should tolerate things instead of becoming agitated. This is the nature of the love of the gopis. In the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, Krishna tells Uddhava, Pashyan Paki Pariyata, that the nature of material solutions is that they just bring more and more material problems. We want to solve a problem with a material solution, but the very solution that we adopt causes more problems. You have some difficulty with your crops, and so you bring in some predator, which is an outside predator from your country, and then that predator eats all those insects, but then all of a sudden it eats other beneficial insects or something too, and then all of a sudden you're in a worse situation than you were to begin with. So pashyat paka viparyatam, that the solutions in the material will just cause more problems. And we see this ultimately in the Gopis of Brindavan, that the Gopis of Brindavan, they accept suffering as the greatest happiness. In the Madhya Leela of Chaitanya Charitamrita, when Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami speaks about the love or the mood of Madhavendra Puri, who is the mula or the root of the tree of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he says, Pragada premera e swabhava achar, nija dukkha vignadira nakore vichar. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. He says, A swabhav achar. This is the natural swabhav, the nature of the behavior of pragada premera. Not just prem, but pragada premera. Very, very intense love of God. That nija dukkha vigna adira na kore bichar. Na kore bichar. They don't consider such a person nija dukkha vigna, any personal inconvenience, any personal problems. And therefore Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami describes in the Antya-lila of Chaitanya Charitamrita in chapter 20, they describe, this is the last chapter of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Mahaprabhu's mood here in Jagannath Puri. And in the 47th verse of that chapter, this chapter is called the Shikshastika verses. And it speaks about the mood of Mahaprabhu here in Puri and how he began to compose these verses of the Shikshastika. And the 47th verse describes, Kaviraj Goswami says, the mood of Srimati Radharani. Asli seva paradatam panastumam adarshana mamahatam kurotuva yata tata vidatu lampato mat prananatastu saevana praha. Whatever Krishna wants to do, aslisa, if he wants to embrace me, paradatam, I'm falling down at his feet, or panastumam, if he wants to kick me, if he wants to step on me, aslisa, if he wants to embrace me, or panashtumam, if he wants to step on me, adarshanam, if he doesn't want to come before me. This is the mood of Radharani after Krishna's left Brindavan. Okay, and this is what the Gopis are expressing in these verses today to Uddhava, that whether adarshana, whether you don't want to be visible before me, marmahatam, whether you want to break my heart, you want to leave me. And then we get some message that, oh, Krishna, you know, he's with some other ladies, he's with some hunchback woman in her quarters in Mathura. Because after all, you're a lumpata. So yata tata, let you do however you like. Vidadatu, however you want to, because he's a lumpata, he's a debauchee. But still, mat prananata, mat prananata, he's the Lord of my heart. Tu saeva napra, and no one else. So this verse that we're reading today, these verses from the 47th chapter, where the Gopis are responding to Uddhava's message from Krishna. And in their response, they're glorifying the ladies of Mathura. They're saying many things, directly and indirectly. But it's spoken in this mood of this last verse of the Shikshastika prayer. That let Krishna, he can do whatever he wants to with me. Prabhupada sometimes translates this verse. He says he can go with some other woman if he wants. But still, mat prananatas tu sa eva napraha. He's the Lord of my life and no one else. And Kaviraj Goswami gives a very long explanation, a commentary, Bengali Paya commentary on this verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita. We don't have sufficient time to take many days to go through the commentary on this verse, but just to give some purport to it to help us to understand this verse from the 47 verses from the 47th chapter, the 10th canto. The Gopis, Mahaprabhu, when he's saying, Ami Pat Krishna Padadasi. This is the first thing. That I'm a maid servant of Krishna. And this is an incredible thing. Many people, when they come to Krishna consciousness, they say, wow, this is really cool. Great food at the Sunday feast program. There was a really nice drama. Your deity worship is really cool. Your books are really awesome. The artwork is fantastic. There's also a lot of pretty girls at the temple, handsome guys. The music really nice. They like so many things. But you want me to become a servant? And this is the ultimate goal, to become a servant? And they're thinking, how is that? How is that any kind of pleasure? But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was teaching us, he's saying, Ami Krishna Padadasi. I'm a maid servant of Krishna. And who is Krishna? He's Rasa Sukha Rasi. Rasa Sukha Rasi, he's a reservoir of all mellows, of all transcendental mellows. So Krishna Alingya, he can embrace me, and therefore Atmasat, he can make me feel one with him. Or Kiva na deha darshan, maybe he doesn't give me darshan, but still, mat prananatat, he is the Lord of my life, he's my everything. And the gopis are speaking to each other. Sakhi sunamora manira nishchoy. They're speaking to each other, my dear gopis, please hear my mind. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted, Krishna as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to understand the mood of Radha in this 47th chapter, this Brahma Ragit section of the Bhagavatam, to do that, Krishna, he had to come as Mahaprabhu, but to do that, he had to have some very confidential companions. As is indicated here, Mahaprabhu says, Sakhi hey. Who is the Sakhi that he's speaking to? He's speaking to Lalita and Vishaka in the form of Swarup Damodar and Roy Ramananda. Because there has to be some udipana, there has to be something to inspire us to remember the object of love, but there also has to be somebody to support that. And that support is given by the Gopis of Brindavan. Srimati Radharani, to fully relish separation from Krishna, she has to have other Gopis there so she can speak to them. Krishna, as we'll hear, in Dwarka, was in a disadvantage. Although Krishna says, Yega tam mam prapadyante tam sataiva bhajamyaham, I reciprocate according to how they approach me. He couldn't reciprocate with the Gopis of Brindavan because they're experiencing something together in a group. And Krishna, he also, in Dwarka, he's also experiencing separation from the Gopis and Radha. But he's at one big disadvantage in expression of his feelings and the relishment of his feelings. There's no one there that he can speak to about it. Because those intimate friends that you can speak to about these things, they help us to go deeper and deeper into those feelings. So here he's saying, Sakhi hey, my dear Gopi. He's addressing Swarup Damodar and Roy Ramananda. Sunamora manananishchoy. You please hear my mind. Kiba anuraga kori, kiba dukkha diya mare. That my affection for Krishna is there. He's More Praneshwar Krishna, Anyanoi, no one else. He's my Prana Ishvara, the Lord of my life, no one else. Even if he shows me anurag, affection, or dukkha, he gives me unhappiness, or diyamade, or if he kills me by giving me this unhappiness. This is real love. And this, indirectly, we're also learning from these verses. This is union in separation. This is where we find ecstasy in separation. And as devotees, tatenu kampam susamikshimano bunjana evatmrikitam vipakam nidvad vapuvir vidadan namaste jiveta yomukti pade sadayabak. We learn, and this verse is also a foundational verse, this verse from the, I believe, 15th chapter of the 10th canto, which is spoken by Lord Brahma, which describes that a devotee is someone who doesn't complain, who doesn't, as we would say in America, doesn't freak out. Why is this happening to me? Why my home is being invaded by an army? Why this is happening to me? I'm a devotee. This shouldn't happen to me. But a devotee doesn't think that. A devotee is so deep. There are some people, like we hear about, some years ago we heard about some Amish persons. It was a very horrific thing that happened. Some crazy person who used to deliver milk or something to their community. He came with a bunch of guns to the school, and he forced his way into the school, and he boarded the doors with nails and things, and he killed so many of the children of the Amish there, and then killed himself. And what was the response of the Amish community? That their response went worldwide. It was amazing. They weren't hateful toward him. They felt compassion for him. And so much so that they got together and they collected money to give to the wife of the person who killed their children. And they went to her and they said, "We forgive you. And if you need some help, because you must be missing your husband, and now your son doesn't have a father, if there's something that we can do to help," that's amazing. Huh? But the feelings of the gopis go far, far beyond even that. The gopis, that they're thinking, even if he kills me, if it gives Krishna happiness, if my unhappiness brings happiness to Krishna, then that's very good. Tatenu kampam susamikshimano, even a common devotee, Lord Brahma is telling, even a general devotee, he should accept whatever conditions come, that this is my fault, I am do this, and prana, that they go on worshipping the Lord. They don't stop. That's an amazing thing. But even more amazing is the nature of the gopis. And Kaviraj Goswami, explaining this last verse of Shikshashtakam, he's written a beautiful song describing it. We'll sing a few more verses from it. Kivateno lumpata shakta drishta Kivalano lumpata shakta drishta sakapata anya marigona korisata More dite mana pida mora age kora pida Tambuteno mora prananata Saki Kivateno lumpata satta drishta sakapata. Even though Krishna, he's a lumpata, he's a debauchee. Even though satta, he's a criminal, someone who's deceiving me. He's drishta. He's very, very obstinate, and he's sakapata. He has this cheating propensity. Anya nari gana, with other ladies. Anya nari gana kori sata. He's accepting other different ladies with him. And he's doing this to give distress to me. This is indirectly what the gopis are indicating to Uddhava when they're speaking to him. And again, they're speaking to Uddhava, as we've commented previously, wasn't a mental adjustment. It's not that they had a meeting. They said, well, Krishna said this and this. How can we reply to that? Well, let's figure this out. It's just urguna, which means something which is exploding from their heart. Their feelings are coming out so intensely. And they're saying that by speaking about the glories of the ladies of Mathura, it's echoed in these verses from the 20th chapter of the Anchalila of Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Mahaprabhu is speaking in the mood of the Gopis. And the Gopis are saying that even if Krishna wants to go to some other women, Anya Nadi Gana Kuruksetra, and he's doing that to hurt me. He's doing that to cause me pain and distress. Still, Mura Prananata, he's the Lord of my life and no one else. And the Gopis, and Mahaprabhu says, go on. Nagani apana duk, shabe vanchi tanra suk, tanra shuka amara tatparja. Mori jari diha duk, tanra hoira mahashuk, say duka mora sukha varya. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Mahaprabhu in the mood of the Gopis is saying, Nagani apana duk. I don't mind. Nagani means to count. I'm not counting the miseries that I have. Generally, between a boyfriend and a girlfriend, or between a husband and wife. The wife, she has a little notebook, and she's writing down. You came late. You spoke to me in a harsh way. You yelled at me in front of my friends. You broke something. You did this. You did that. But Mahaprabhu was saying, Nagani apana duk. I can't count my personal misery. I don't care about my misery. The only thing that I care about is tanra suk. I care about the happiness of Krishna. And he says, Amara tatparja. This is the aim of my life. This is the purpose of my life. And mori jadi means if, mori jadi diya duk, tanra hoili mahasuk. If giving me unhappiness brings him happiness, then say duk mora sukha bharya. That duk, that unhappiness, is mora suk, my happiness, but mora sukha varya, it's the best of my happiness. Srila Prabhupada describes in his purport to this verse that a pure devotee, he says, a beautiful sentence, listen carefully what he says, a pure devotee has no way of sensing happiness except by seeing that Krishna is happy in every respect. Wow, you have to read that a few times. A pure devotee has no way, in other words, to perceive or to sense happiness except by seeing that Krishna is happy in every respect. In other words, the happiness of devotee is to see the happiness of Krishna, to see the happiness of Guru. And as the Gopis are describing to Uddhava, if Krishna's getting more happiness there in Mathura, that's okay. But we're unhappy because we think he's not getting happiness there. Because there's no Brindavan forest. There's no Govardhan hill. It's how can they give perfect happiness to him there? And the Gopis, Mahaprabhu describes in the Anchalila chapter 20. Shehi nari jiye kene Krishna marma vyata jani tabu Krishna kori gada rosha. Nije shuka mani kaj paduka tasire baj Krishna mata chahi santosh. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare Saki Hai. So Mahaprabhu is telling Sri Damodar and Roy Ramananda, he's Krishna, but he's come in the mood of Radha. So to taste, he's Krishna wanting to taste the mood of Radha. And to do that, he has to have Lalita and Vishaka, Radharani's most intimate girlfriend companions. And so now he's expressing his mood. Say nari jivikeni Krishna marma vyata jani. That woman who knows that Krishna's vyarta jani, who knows she knows that Krishna's heart is unhappiness. But still that woman, Tabu Krishna Goda Rosh. Goda Rosh means that she's angry with him. She experiences some anger toward Krishna. She says that such a lady, Nija Suke Mani Kaj. Her kaj, her work, her business. In Bengali and Oriya, the word kaj is a common word. You say, what is your kaj? What kind of kaj do you do? What kind of work do you do? That her work, Nija Sukha Mani, she's just concerned about her own happiness. And that let a thunderbolt fall upon her head. Because for ourselves, the Gopis say, Krishna matra chahiye santosh. All that we want is the happiness of Krishna. We don't want any reciprocation from Krishna. We don't want anything for ourselves at all. And then Mahaprabhu, he speaks about one Kushti Viprera. Kushtikushi means someone who has leprosy, a Brahman who has leprosy. Kushti Vipraramani Pati Brakta Shiromani Pati Lagi Koila Veshya Seva Stambila Sharera Gati Jiaila Mrita Pati Tushta Koila Mukyatina Deva. Just like that Ramani, that wife of that Kushti Vipra, the wife of the Brahman who had leprosy, that lady was Pati Brakta Shiromani. She's the topmost of chaste ladies. It reminds me, here in Orissa, in Jagannath Puri, at one point, the people had come forward to do some help for the lepers in Orissa, in Puri. And they'd arranged for some fooding, some shelter for them, some food for them and things. But there was a problem, because here in Jagannath Puri, in Orissa, there's a strong sense of caste. And some of the lepers were complaining that, look, I'm a Brahmin leper, this is a Sudra leper, I'm not going to sit next to him. And so the Chaitanya Gaudiya Mutt, they opened up a separate place to serve the Brahmin lepers. Because as Brahmin lepers, they feel like we're better than the other lepers. So this is a story Mahaprabhu is speaking to Ramananda Rai Sri Damodar of the Kushti Vipra Ramani, the wife of the Brahmin who had leprosy. And that lady, she was Pati Brata Shiromani. Pati Lagi, for the satisfaction of her pati, for her satisfaction of her husband. Koila Veshya Seva. Veshya means a prostitute. She began doing service to a prostitute. And Stambila Surya Gati. She was so powerful. The Stambila Surya Gati. Surya Gati means how the Gati, or the goal, or the movement of the sun. And Stambila means like a stumble, or to stop. She stopped the sun. And Tushta Koila Mukyatina Dev, she pleased 3 devatas. So Prabhupada in his purport to this verse mentions several different Puranas and how they speak about a Brahmin who had leprosy, but he had a very chaste wife, and how that wife served him. So I'd like to tell you this story, principally here from the Garuda and Markandeya Puranas. In the first canto of the Garuda Purana, in chapter 142, there's a story told about a Brahmin. His name was Kaushik, and he was living in a city called Pratishthanupur. And Kaushik had leprosy, but his wife Sandili, she was a very, very chaste lady. So much so that she worshipped her. She was a Pativrata Shiromani, Shikesh jewel of all wives. She worshipped her husband like a god. She was so chaste to her husband. Even when he would chastise her, she didn't want to argue back. She never considered him to be anything other than her worshipable deity. And one day, Kaushik, he was a bit of a lusty fellow, and he'd seen a prostitute. So Kaushik, he couldn't even walk. And Kaushik, he instructed his wife that you take me, there's this beautiful woman, I've seen this prostitute, I want you to take me there. So she carried her husband on her shoulders. Very difficult for a lady to carry her husband on her shoulders. She carried him to the house of the prostitute. And she brought some money with her to please the prostitute. Now, as they were going on the way, and it's a long, complicated story, there was one rishi named Mandavya Muni who had been wrongly accused and punished by the king. And he'd been impaled. They put him on top of a pointed lance, which is piercing his body little by little, until that lance went all the way to the head. And it's a long, complicated story, but we won't go into there. But it was dark, and that chaste lady, Sandili, couldn't see him. She's carrying her husband on her shoulders. It's very difficult. And her husband's foot accidentally bumped into the sage. And Mandavya Muni became furious with this. He said, whoever's kicked me, they'll die at sunrise. And so when Sandili heard this, she made a vow that if I'm truly chaste, then the sun will no longer rise. And so that story stops there in the Garuda Purana, but it's described further what happened next in the Markandeya Purana. The next morning, because of the words of Sandili, she's carrying her husband on her shoulders to go and render service to a prostitute so that her husband can enjoy with the prostitute. Sandili was such a personality, such a very, very chaste lady. She's truly Pativrata Shiromani. And this is what the example Mahaprabhu is using here. That she always considered her husband to be her worshipful deity. She never became angry when he chastised her and spoke harshly to her. And she's taking him to see a prostitute and serve the prostitute. So on the way, they bumped into this Mandavya Muni, who was in a difficult situation, and the foot of Kaushik touched the body of Mandavya. Mandavya cursed that whoever touched me with their foot, they're going to die before sunrise, at sunrise. And so then Sandili, that chaste lady, she said, if I'm truly chaste, then the sun is no longer going to rise. This is how great personalities deal with things. Instead of wanting to go and fight or see some external cause, they, by the strength of their austerities, by the strength of this lady's chastity, they accomplish things. So the Markandeya Purana describes that the next morning the sun didn't rise for the whole rest of the day, nor the next day, and there was darkness for many years. And the demigods started freaking out because the sun is the life of everything. So the demigods couldn't understand what was going on. They approached Lord Brahma for help. And he told them that this is due to the greatness of one lady who's Pativrata. She's a very, very chaste wife. And he says that this Mandavya Muni, he has such intense austerity. He's sitting on this stake. It's gone up to his anus. And it's piercing his entire body, but still he's alive and he's doing his austerities. But his power of austerity is defeated by this Sandili, this lady, who's carrying her husband to go to see a prostitute and going to serve that prostitute. And elsewhere it is described that prostitute, she didn't want anything to do with that man. No, this guy's got leprosy. And then Sandili said, well, look, I'll serve you. What can I do for you? And she served her so nicely. The prostitute finally said, okay. So the demigods were freaking out, and the sun didn't rise. Because Sandili, she made a vow that if I'm truly chaste, the sun's not going to rise. So they went to Lord Brahma, and Lord Brahma told them, look, if you want to solve this, you want to bring things back to normal, you should go to Anasuya, the wife of Atri Muni. Anasuya is a very, very famous chaste lady. And if she's pleased with you, then she can arrange for the sun to rise again. So the demigods, they went to Anasuya. They offered obeisances to her and offered prayers. And they requested her, please restore the system of day and nights. And that lady, she said that, I can do that, but I don't want to diminish the greatness of a chaste wife. So we have to first give respect to her. We have to honor her. And simultaneously, we can reestablish the days and nights, but simultaneously we have to make sure that this good wife and her husband are not destroyed. So then Anasuya, on the request of the demigods, went to Sandili, that chaste wife, and she said, oh, blessed lady, I hope that you always have great happiness seeing the face of your husband. And may you consider, she told him, Markandeya Purana says that, may you consider your husband to be greater than all the demigods. She said, I've achieved siddhi, I've achieved perfection just by faithfully following my husband and serving him. All my desires have become fulfilled. All obstacles have been removed from my path. Everything that a man can attain is gotten because of such a chaste lady. So you should always focus on serving your husband. And so that Pativrata lady, Sandili, she said, oh, my dear Anasuya, you're the best of chaste women. And we're very blessed to see you. I can tell you honestly, the service of my husband is my life. So you tell me then, why have you come? And how can we serve you? And Anasuya said, well, there's this problem, you see. This Mandavya Muni, he became angry and he cursed that whoever touched me with their foot, they're going to die at sunrise. And then you took a vow the sun won't rise. And now the demigods are very, very upset. And so they begged me to come back, to come to you to restore the system of day and night. And because of there's no system of day and night, there's no yajnas going on, the demigods are not getting any nourishment, there's no rain, the whole world's going to become destroyed. So my dear lady, to stop the distress of the world, please let the sun rise normally. And when Sandili heard this, right, the demigod's request, she hung her head down. She said, I'm sorry, but I can't do it. She was so dedicated to her husband. This Mandavya Muni is a very angry person. He cursed my husband to die when the sun rises. So if I take my vow back, saying that the sun won't rise, then my husband's going to die. And then Anasuya told us, don't worry, I'll make things right. You take your words back. Your husband will die, but then I'll bring him back to life, and I'll give him a beautiful, youthful body, because her husband was very, very old, and he had leprosy. I'll free him from leprosy. I'll give him a youthful body. She said, Anasuya said, my work, I'm dedicated to glorifying chaste women, and therefore I desire to honor you. And so Sandili agreed. And then Suryadev Vivishvan rose, and Kaushik, her husband, fell down to the ground dead. And Sandili embraced his body and began to cry. And Anasuya comforted, said, don't lament, it's okay. You see the power I have by serving my husband. On the strength of the chastity of my husband, what I have. And on the strength of that chastity, I'm going to bring him back to life. And so Kaushik's life was restored. And at that time, these three guna avatars, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, came before her. And they were very pleased with Anasuya, and they offered her some benediction. Anasuya said, I would like it if you are born as my children. And so the Bhagavatam in the 4th canto describes, Atre patnyanasuya trin yagye suyasut sutan daktam durvasam somam atmesha brahmasambhavan. That Anasuya, the wife of Atri Muni, she gave birth to three very famous sons, Soma, Dattatreya, and Durvasa Muni, who are partial representations of Vishnu, Shiva, and Lord Brahma. Soma was a partial representation of Lord Brahma. Dattatreya was a partial representation of Vishnu, and Durvasa Muni was a partial representation of Lord Shiva. So this is the nature of the gopis. And try to understand their response to this message, their response to Krishna's leaving Brindavan. It's unlike anything we've ever heard before. If a woman, if her husband leaves her, she cries. But if the woman hears that her husband is gone with another man, then she becomes so terribly hurt. It breaks her heart. She becomes naturally very, very angry. But the gopis of Brindavan, they're saying, fine, if that gives him more happiness. And the example Mahaprabhu was giving is this story of Sandili, that she's doing service to a prostitute so that her husband can get some pleasure with the prostitute. She's not thinking of her own pleasure at all. This is the nature of the love of the gopis. And to the extent that the gopis are thinking that if Krishna gets some happiness with someone else, that's very good. But the gopis, they're feeling unhappy. As we're hearing in these verses from their response to Uddhava's message from Krishna, they're feeling unhappy because we know that Mathura is nothing compared to Brindavan. Krishna's not getting happy there, and not being happy, and thinking that Krishna's not being happy, that's death for us. We can't tolerate that. So this is the nature of the love of the gopis. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he sings in Saranagati. Tomara sevaya dukkha hoya jata seyota parama sukha seva sukha dukkha parama sampada nasaya vidya dukkha. The Tomara sevaya, for your service, dukkha hoya jata. If it so happens that I get some unhappiness, then sayata paramasuk. That unhappiness that I get is my greatest happiness. Therefore, we spoke in our last session how Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he says that when these unhappiness comes to me, we should understand that it's actually a blessing from Krishna. As Kunti Devi prays, Vipada Shantu Tasasvat. Bring us problems again and again, because when the problems come, it's a test for me. And I'm able to go deeper and deeper and deeper in my body. The test didn't come. How would I go deeper? So this dukkha, this unhappiness and that I'm getting in my service, sayata paramasukha, this is my greatest happiness. Seva sukha dukkha paramasampada. That whatever unhappiness or happiness that I get, happiness I get service, paramasampada, that's my greatest wealth. That gives me everything. This is a purport of Krishna's words in the Gita. Karmani vadi karaste mafalisa kadachana makarma phala hetur bur ma teshango swakarmani in chapter 2, text 47. Krishna tells Arjuna that you have the right, karmani vadi karaste, you have a right to do your prescribed duty. But mafalesa kadachana, you're not entitled to the fruits of action. Makarma phala hetur bur. Don't consider yourself to be the cause of the results of your activities, and don't be attached to not doing your duty. It's a very, very deep principle. And who do we see this in? Who completely gives everything and doesn't consider themselves to be the doer of things and doesn't want the fruits of the action? Who do we see this in other than the gopis of Brindavan? And this is the nature of the meeting in Kuruksetra. When those gopis, they meet Krishna in Kuruksetra, they're echoing the same mood, the same mood that we find in these verses in this 47th chapter of the 10th canto. And we find the same mood again in Jagannath Puri. Many, many things that could be said with this, but I'm feeling a little uncomfortable that we're going so late. Hare Krishna, my pranams for Hoxaja Krishna Prabhu, such a wonderful devotee doing such wonderful service in Scotland. Now I want to stop here, and if anybody has any reflections or anything, you can please type them in. I want to thank the different devotees who've been taking part, Kuruksetra Prabhu and Anapani Radha and Hoxaja Prabhu in particular. So Hoxaja Prabhu makes a question, offers a question. He says that Krishna says that I reward accordingly. Yegatamam papadyate. But how is trampling me and breaking my heart, how is that reciprocation? And this is what Krishna is doing to the gopis. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his Sarita Darshani commentary, he says that we've all heard that Krishna loves the gopis of Brindavan more than anyone else. He says, but is it true? It's a lie. It's not true. Krishna obviously loves the ladies of Mathura and Dwarka more than the gopis of Brindavan. And the proof is that he left them. And he put them into an ocean of suffering. They were dying in separation from him. And apparently he's completely impervious to it. He's with these other ladies while they're suffering like this. Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur says, no. If we think like this, and we don't understand. Krishna had a purpose. He wanted to glorify the gopis. Krishna said, Naparayaham nidavadya samyajam. I can't repay the gopis because their love is so spotless. So the only way I can repay them is to put them in this terrible situation. How is putting them into a terrible situation? How is it, if the devotees find themselves in a very terrible situation, how is it that a blessing from Krishna? Srila Bhaktisiddhanta says it's a great blessing. And we should see that. That doesn't mean that we don't cry. It doesn't mean the gopis say, oh, actually Krishna left us to give us a blessing. Now we're very happy we know that. No, the gopis are still crying and crying. We want Krishna. But it's a blessing, Vishwanath says. Because two reasons. One, he's glorifying them. Because unless that separation had been there, he gives an example of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. He says that if someone comes to sell you some gold, and you're wondering, is this pure gold? Or is this gold mixed with something else, some other alloys? So how do you tell? You have to take a flame and you put it on the gold and you melt the gold. And when the gold melts, then you can see how pure it is. So Krishna, to glorify the gopis, melted their hearts with the fire known as Vipralamba Agni, or the fire of separation, to show to the world the purity of the love of the gopis, that there's nothing else like it. And another more internal reason was that he wanted to raise the heights of the love of the gopis to more and more intense levels. That's reciprocal. It's a very, very deep point. It's a very, very difficult point to understand. And this is embodied in Gauranga Mahaprabhu. Gauranga Mahaprabhu is the topmost aspect of our philosophy. He's a personification of Krishna's separation from the gopis. I hope Hoxaja Prabhu, that helps some. Actually, Hoxaja Prabhu, I was thinking about you yesterday, if you're still watching right now. I came across some photos, maybe I'll have to go back and look for them, of your wife on one of our... Siddhabakul, in some places. I'll see if I can find this if you'd like. And Anapayani Radha made some comment, but it looks like she just deleted it. I couldn't see it. Okay. And Gaurani Thai Prabhu is here with us on Zoom. Do you have any reflection you want to share with us, Gaurani Thai Prabhu, on a discussion today?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, just thank you very much your class, and just because your principle is that you really want to hear some reflections, I reflect because I'm speechless. I'm in this mood of hearing, listening. So thank you very much to bring the spiritual mood, like opposite to the material life. So yes, we have to hear again in the association of like-minded devotees. This Pariprashna is wonderful. So thank you very much again. That's
Thank you, Gaurani Thai Prabhu. Thank you for being such a good friend. A real friend is someone. What is a real friend? To show us what real friendship means, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna comes as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to glorify Radharani's dealings with the Gopis. And he shows us those exchanges between himself and Sri Damodar and Roy Ramananda. And they're coming together in a quiet place, and they're speaking Guya Makyati Prichati, very confidential things. That's the real nature of friendship. So, Anna Piney says she didn't delete it. Okay. But somehow it disappeared, Anna Piney.
Anyway, fortunately, I have Anna Piney's comment. May I read
Okay,
it out?
Krishna Kun sees Anna Piney's comment. So Krishna Kun, read it out
So
loud.
fascinating. The Gopis' scorching fire of pain can be pacified if at least one lady trained in Brindavan can very mature. He's asking where is this from, by the way.
This is the glories of the Gopis of Vrindavan. Janava Mata Mataji Hare Krishna, so you taking part. Anybody else here?
Was this your comment, or what was this in the Tipa?
No, this is from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's
Vishwanath
commentary.
Chakravarti.
Yeah, he was saying.
Amazing.
If just one lady is it, then the Gopis feel happy because they've completely given up all identification with their body, and they're only wanting the pleasure of Krishna. This is the most amazing love.
For me, this was really a very, very big point. That
Speak loudly.
that separation, the Gopi separation, is not painful for them because they want their sense gratification. This is Atma they feel such intense separation because they are concerned about Krishna's happiness. They can't. Krishna is not there for your pleasure because there is no one else. They know that there is no one else who can serve Krishna like them. So they are worrying about that. They are worrying about Krishna, and that's why they are dying. And that's why Srimati Radharani is lying in the bank of the Jamuna and dying.
Yeah,
Not
they're thinking
because-
he's not getting pleasure. We're going to die. Keep going.
Yeah. That was a very good point. Yeah.
Brinda Devi, and it's not easy for you, your language, but did you want to share anything? You can speak in Russian, maybe Krishna Kun can translate if you have any reflections.
Мне много реализаций сегодня.
I have many realizations today.
Хотела сегодня, когда Джапу читала, если бы меня спросили...
And Brinda Devi, you can speak loudly too, because they'll hear you in Russian. Anapayani will understand.
Можно сказать, просто громче, что
Кто такая Шримати Радхарани, если бы меня спросили, чтобы я ответила? И сегодня на лекции я настолько глубоко стала понимать, что такое любовь Шримати Радхарани, я далеко не понимаю еще, но я начала понимать, что Шримати Радхарани, читание Махапрабху, это именно та любовь настоящая, которая желает счастья своему любимому человеку, своему любимому.
Just this morning she was thinking about who is Srimati Radharani. I don't know who she is. And then this lecture gave her this realization that Srimati Radharani is, and the Gopis that she's that person who has actual love that desires the happiness of the beloved only. And there is no such love anywhere.
И я все это время понимала, что я не люблю Кришну и не желаю ему счастья, потому что я думаю больше о себе, и он мне служит больше, чем я служу ему.
All this time I understand that I don't love Krishna. I don't want his happiness, and he's serving me more than I'm serving him.
Oh.
Кришна делает все для меня, но я не знаю, как. Я хочу научиться делать все для него.
Krishna is doing everything for me, and I want to learn how to do something for him.
И, может быть, примеры великих преданных помогут мне понять, как.
And maybe the examples of big devotees, great devotees will help me to understand how to serve him, how to serve, give Krishna some happiness.
Hare Krishna, thank you. That's very, very beautiful. Yeah, we should, when we come in contact with the gopis, it's not that we, because we have this attitude of sense enjoyment. When we read about Krishna and the gopis, it's not that we're reading about it for our pleasure, but we should be reading and we hear about, oh my God, this is the standard. And then we realize, I'm so far, I have no standard. And then we can begin to cry. I want to thank Sham Joshi also and Sarvadrik Prabhu, my Guru Jana, godbrother of my Guru Maharaj, taking part today. Anapayani Radha also comments, Brahma Gita is a foundation of Gaura Lila. And that was one of our points. A very, very important point, I think. Let's see here. Some other comment, I think it just came. And Adhoksaja Krishna Prabhu comments that this point is described in Sri Ram Maharaj's book, Napariyaham. That the gopis, they know Krishna can only really be happy with them. That's such a beautiful, beautiful point. It's such a very, very deep point. They're so very, very selfless. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and stop there. And we'll continue again next week, unless somebody has something else very in here. Continue next week, and pretty soon we'll be going and hearing about Uddhava bringing the gopis' message back to Krishna, and then Krishna going to Dwarka and what happened there, and how the gopis were hearing about Krishna in Dwarka, and how Krishna's meditating on the gopis while he's in Dwarka. And then finally we'll hear something about Kuruksetra, and then we'll come to Jagannath Puri at the end of that. So, Krishna Kundi, you have something else?
I have a question. It's a practical question.
Uh-huh.
You were quoting this fantastic purport that there may be sufficient cause for being unhappy, but if we counteract it, then we enter a darkest region of anxieties. I remember this purport. So I'm just wondering about what counteracting exactly would mean in the case of a devotee who is trying to become a devotee of Mahaprabhu and their Guru Janas, like for example in the present situation. Just in general, what is counteracting? Because devotees are practical, Upanugas are practical. They are keeping their bodies and souls together.
Well, we see the amazing devotees in Ukraine right now. Some of them, they, for their service, they left the country so they could take care of their children, or they could take care of their body and do their service in some other way. But some devotees, they've accepted the situation in the sense that they've stayed there, and they're saying it's a good situation. Now we can distribute more prasadam. We heard from one of our friends in Petros that before even we did Rath Yatra, and some people came, but not so many. But now everybody's coming to the temple, and now that they're bringing bags. We're distributing over 1,000 plates of prasadam, over 2,000 plates of prasadam a day now. Last I heard it was 1,000. Over 2,000 plates now, and people are coming to the temple and bringing bags of food and vegetables, grains and things. And people are coming. They're helping them cut vegetables, and they're sitting in the kirtans, and they're telling them now, even after the war is over, we want to keep coming and doing this. So the devotees, they're accepting that. They're not complaining, why is this happening? Why are these people attacking us? This is not fair. They're just thinking this is what Krishna's given, and they're not trying to counteract that. So the counteraction, these are very subtle points. It's not that we can say if someone tries to protect their body, that they're trying to counteract a reversal. The gopis may try to protect their body because they're not protecting their body. They're saying, let me die for Krishna's service. But if I die, as Radharani says in one song, if I die, then Krishna's going to become unhappy. Yeah. So I can't die. Therefore, I have to protect my body. I have to keep myself alive. I have to keep my body healthy because I'm meant to bring pleasure. We're meant to bring pleasure to Guru and Krishna. So we protect our bodies for those reasons. But if something comes and I can't sleep so comfortably, I need a softer bed. Now, if that softer bed is conducive for your service, maybe maybe you're not sleeping enough, and therefore you need a softer bed, because if you don't sleep enough, you can't do service. That's one thing. But if it's just that, oh, I want to be able to enjoy more, this is what Prabhupada, I feel, is speaking about. Huh? We shouldn't try to, if there's some reversals in life, we shouldn't try to counteract them, because the more that we try to counteract them, the more to try to rectify them, the more material anxiety we get into. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just thinking
It's a beautiful purport. Anybody's wondering, that's 4:19:34. Bhagavatam, Prabhupada's purport, 4:19:34. Hare Krishna. Adhokshaja Prabhu, I was thinking about you guys yesterday, as I mentioned. We hope we can get your Sangha here again sometime in Puri. And I think about the service you guys have done. And we know the kind of stuff you guys have been through for so many years. And it's such a wonderful example for all of us, such a wonderful inspiration, how you're serving in spite of all so many difficulties. So we're going to go ahead and stop there. Gauranga Thai Prabhu shared some comment from my Guru Maharaj. Maybe I should go ahead and read that out first. I don't know what it is yet, but let me just look at it here. He said that in the neophyte stage, when we have such strong attachment, we should regularly take sadhu sangha, Vaishnava sangha, association with sadhu premi bhakta, who is bound up the Supreme Lord in his heart with a rope of love. Krishna never leaves the heart of such a sadhu. Such a devotee has no attachment to his body and bodily relations. He has only one attachment, which is to the lotus feet of Krishna. If you get the mercy of such Vaishnavas by associating with them, hearing from them, and rendering service to them, then this strong attachment will be channeled toward the lotus feet of Krishna. Sadhak means one who's practicing sadhana bhakti, the primary neophyte stage. Sadhaks at such a level should be very, very careful. They should develop intense greed. How can I have the association of such sadhu Vaishnavas? Huh? How can I get it? How can I always stay in such association? That association, he says, is like a strong fort or shield. So this is also the nature of the Gopis. This is their strong fort or shield. When they're feeling separation from Krishna, they come together and they speak the glories of Krishna. So we'll go ahead and stop there. Thank you all very much. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupad ki jai, Samaveda Bhakta Binda ki jai, Vancha Kalpatarubhischa, Kripa Sindhu Bhyeva cha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha, Nandakoti Vaishnava Brinda ki jai.